Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of The Meeting Place. We're not going to do a long intro this week. We're going to go right into it. And our guest today is Norman Javier, or Norm, as we call him around the office. Norm is the coordinator of our Co-Curricular Record program and leadership programs. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how Norm has been dealing with COVID-19 sitting at home. Norm, luckily, has a cottage up north that he's been building that he has been able to isolate in. So he's going to tell us a little bit about that as well. Welcome, Norm.
Hey, Jonathan. Thank you so much for having me at the meeting place.
We're excited to chat with you today. So can you tell us a bit about your programs at UTSC? I know we know the name of them, but give us a little more detail into what you do.
Yeah, so first off, the Co-Curricular Record. I can only assume that the majority of people out here is familiar with the Co-Curricular Record. What that is, it's an online database that has a collection of a number of different opportunities available on campus and some off campus. What we're hoping to do is basically keep track of everyone's involvement on campus and add it to a document recognized by the university.
Yeah, I like to think of it as like a non-academic transcript. It's, a way that, because it is a university certified thing, right? The vice provost signs off on it, I think.
That's correct.
Yeah, and it'll list, so I'm a big advocate for the Co-Curricular Record. I went to Wilfrid Laurier and they claim to have invented the Co-Curricular Record. At least they were the first in Ontario to use it. And I worked on that portfolio when I was there as a student. So I was a huge advocate for it. And I remember going to my first ever job interview to work at the University of Waterloo, and I had submitted my CCR with my application, and they told me in the interview I was the only person to hand one in with my resume, and I got that job, Norm. So it has a 100% success rate in my eyes.
That's awesome. And what I do really appreciate about this record is the fact that it ties it to a number of competencies and or learning objectives. So it really highlights what the skills are that are learned, what skills are sort of available for students and available to them when it comes to each and every one of the opportunities. And people can sort of weed some positions out based on what they're trying to learn for themselves at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great thing to have access to for students. Now, if they want to build some of their skills and add things to their co-curricular record, they can do that through the other program you offer, right?
That's correct. So the leadership piece is the other side of my portfolio. And I had the opportunity when I first started here, really just a year ago, to redevelop that program. I have about over 12, 13 years experience working in leadership. And my focus really is trying to provide platforms and opportunities for students to challenge themselves, take more risks, and get involved, but at the same time, learn from those opportunities.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are some of the different workshop series that people are able to sign up for? I know maybe not right now, given that we're in a bit of a unique scenario, but if students, from September last year, next September, if they wanted to get involved, what are some of the specific programs they can work on?
Yeah, so the leadership program is called All In Leadership. It's made up of a series of 4 workshops. Each of these 4 workshops target different soft skills. Leadership to me is really offering that opportunity for students to develop what leadership is to them. I try not to define it. I try to challenge students to define it from their own perspective. What we focus in on is soft skill development. The reason why I like to focus on that, it's really because a lot of employers are looking for these soft skills, and these soft skills aren't always taught in the classroom.
Yeah, definitely.
So what we try to provide are these opportunities for them to learn about soft skills and challenge and build on that confidence. So a lot of these workshops are based on playing games, a number of different activities, a number of different challenges. They're not necessarily learning about the definitions of these soft skills. They're actually practicing them. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to communication, they're doing it. When it comes to teamwork and team building, they're doing it through these activities and through these games. Yeah,
there's definitely a level of you've got to get comfortable doing these things, right? And so just reading about them or listening to somebody lecture about them it's not going to give you the experience you really need to feel confident to do those things in your everyday life.
Yeah, that's correct. And not to say that people cannot learn from lectures. I think we all learn from lectures. But when it comes to these soft skills, in order for you to build on that confidence, you need to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's I think if you speak to a lot of those staff who work in our own department, you'd probably find out that a lot of them were involved in your type of programming as students, and that's kind of what led them to end up working in student affairs. I know that's my case. I worked in our student leadership center as a student, and those workshops were really the thing that made me realize there was a career that I could look at outside of what my degree was. And like that changed the whole course of, well, it gave me a career, right? So yeah, I'm a big time advocate for those programs. So hopefully a lot of students take advantage. Now, have you been able to think about how you're going to try and transition some of this programming? If we, given that right now, you and I are chatting from our own houses, it's changed the way we've had to do things. COVID-19 and having to self-isolate has had a significant impact on our programming. And how do you think that's going to impact how you can offer your programs down the line?
That's a really, really good question, but also a very tough question for me to answer right now. A lot of my programming really depends on the students that are in that room and that are present. I feel as if having that presence creates a safe space for vulnerability. I think we grow from being vulnerable. I think we grow from reflecting and hearing other people's perspectives in the spot and in that moment. So it is a tough challenge that I don't know the answer to, but it's not to say that it's impossible. I think I could do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I could do a lot of reflection based work when it comes to our situation right now. But when it comes to trying to get students to work on the same problem together as a team, as a collective, where they actually need to depend on each other physically to achieve a goal, that's where I'm currently struggling.
Yeah, I'm dealing with some of the same thing, but probably on a different scale, just figuring out how to get club renewals done when I'm not going to be meeting with clubs in person like I've done before. But I think platforms like this, like you and me are on Zoom right now, and we're going to record the audio and I'll upload it as a podcast separately. But the ability for us to chat right now, but we can also see each other, I think does make a huge difference, right? It's, we were trying before this to just record on audio only platform, and it doesn't work nearly as well. This is certainly a better platform for that. And it's that face-to-face interaction, right? Because this feels much more like a conversation than a phone call. At least we can see each other and bounce off each other's reactions to what we're saying.
No, I totally agree with you. And there is a level of eye contact. There is a level of being able to read another individual through these video chats. I agree with you in the sense that it's much better than speaking on the phone with someone, better than texting an individual or sending an email and waiting for that response. This is, in the moment. And I think that this platform is helping a lot of us within our workspace, but at the same time, helping a lot of families, a lot of other work environments to really stay connected. And it's definitely beneficial to our current situation. But again, I think a lot of us do struggle being outside of that physical classroom and being able to provide that, on time, in the moment feedback with some personable, or you blanked me there. We'll edit this one. But yeah.
Maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Yeah.
So getting into, I want to get into your history just a little bit, because as you said, you've only been around our campus for about a year, a little more than that. But you've had quite a long history before coming here, and all at one institution. So you were like a one-team guy for a long time, and then you got traded. So tell me what that was like for you, that big shift, and how did you end up at UTSC?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of background. I started off working at George Brown College back in about 2006, 2007. I was a student there taking early childhood education. My goal was to get my 2-year diploma, maybe work a little bit on the side, and then continue on with my degree. in early childhood education to become an educator. The goal was to be an elementary school teacher. In my first year at George Brown, I was a part of the varsity program. I was a competitive snowboarder, so I got involved through varsity. Through that program, I started to network with different departments and different staff, and I started volunteering. And within that first year, I got a job on campus. That wasn't necessarily a student position. I was a student working a larger portfolio and specifically working around the orientation portfolio. Within that first year, again, I developed the college's leadership program, a program that they've never had before. And in my second year, that project doubled in the amount of students, and I had to go part-time in school to really finish off that large leadership project. So I finished my diploma over the 3 years, and upon graduation, they offered me a full-time position to start the very next day. And I think a lot of that had to do with taking a risk and really just showing my passion for providing an opportunity to students, because I was a student at the time, and I was really building this program based on my own experiences. I told myself I would try it for 1 year and then continue on with my education. 1 year turned into 2, 2 years turned into 3, 3 years turned into 12 total. And next thing you know, I get an email from a good friend of mine who also works at U of T, but at St. George campus. He saw a posting that came about, and he emailed me letting me know my name's all over this opportunity. And I told him, thank you so much. I'm not necessarily looking, but it's a great opportunity. So let's try it out. I'll apply. If nothing happens, I'm still in my career. And if something happens, it might be the biggest decision and the toughest decision I might have to make in the time coming. So months pass. I almost forget about the actual job itself. And I get a phone call from U of T with an offer. With an offer to meet for an interview. So I told my boss, I told my director, well, I got a call. Let's try this out. Worst case, I still have my job at George Brown. And a few days later, I get a call with an offer. And again, it was the toughest decision that I've ever had to make. Having to leave my community of 12, 13 years, my family of 12, 13 years. I was a student there, so that's where I grew up, where I matured, and where I became a somewhat professional.
Professional, yeah, I like that. That's nice. It's what you're describing. I was asking the students who I've interviewed so far on this about whether or not was there like a moment for them where UTSC felt like home, because these are students who definitely tried to make the most out of their university time, and they did definitely turn it into a home for them. And 12 years, that definitely sounds like it was home for you.
You know what? That's without aging myself, that's about a third of my life. And it truly was a tough decision. It really was home. And what I really miss the most are the students, that's for sure. It was an environment that I was able to sort of experience in a number of different levels, where I was a student, I was an athlete, I was a volunteer, I was a student staff, and then I became a full-time staff. Through that, I was a part of a number of different communities. I've partnered with a number of different departments and offices. And I was one of the few roles where I was able to have an office at one campus, but work remotely at all 3 campuses. So I had days where I was having one meeting in the morning up at the one Casa Loma campus. I'd have a noontime meeting at the St. James campus, and I would end off my day at the Waterfront campus. And what I enjoyed about that was I was able to see a lot of my students at each of those campuses in one day. And it was a transition, but I think for me, the biggest part that allowed me to take on this new role was the fact that I always challenge students to be uncomfortable. I challenge them to take risk and to challenge themselves. And I figured what better way to leave George Brown than by being uncomfortable, taking a huge risk, and facing a new challenge.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. It's definitely something I always try to encourage students. Like, you don't know if you don't like something until you actually try it, right? So particularly with the programming we run in student life, I know it's not the core academic part of the education you're here to get, but it can enhance the education you're here to get so much that you have to try it while you're here. You have to do those things that'll build up your skills in ways you didn't even know you could do while you were at university. I had a really good boss who used to talk about how university is a cake, and your academic degree is the first layer of the cake. And then if you do co-op, that's another layer to the cake. And then maybe you do a summer internship, and there's another layer to the cake. But if you really want to put frosting all over the cake and add toppings, then you should do extracurriculars and volunteer, become an RA in residence, or become part of a club, or be a board member for your students' union, be part of a leadership program. All those things are just going to add to the education you get while you're at university. So it's certainly something that, you and I are on the same page about, trying to get students to do things that might make you a little uncomfortable, but I think ultimately are going to really build on the skill set you acquire. They're great opportunities, and so having students take advantage of those it's huge. It's super important. It's how it seems like you are in the similar situation to me. You have a whole career now because you did all that when you were a student.
Yeah, I don't think 12, 13 years ago, if I asked myself what I'd be doing, 12, 13 years from now, I would have assumed I was a teacher in elementary, at an elementary school. I never would have thought I'd be in this position. I don't regret anything that I've done. I think everything that I've done has benefited me for myself and for my future, has allowed me to create a lot of opportunities for students to learn. I think it's given me an opportunity to allow students to enjoy their time at school. Mm-hmm. And I think where a lot of students forget, or what a lot of students forget, is the fact that, yes, they might be focusing on spending 90% of their time, on academics, but 90% of your time is not spent in the classroom. Mm-hmm. I'd say 10 to 15% of your time is actually spent inside of a classroom over your 2, 3, 4, 5, however many years you're in post-secondary. And people forget that the other 80 to 90% is outside of a classroom. So I think it's an opportunity for us in student life to take advantage of that time and really make it a time for students to one, enjoy themselves, have fun, to help build community, to meet other students, to meet other people, to work on campus, but more importantly, learn from every single one of those opportunities and experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to get into more about how you're dealing with COVID-19 and self-isolating. And I see a ladder in the background, which makes me wonder if you're up at the cottage right now. Are you there?
I am. So however long ago, I remember going to UTSC on a Monday and Tuesday, and there were rumors about being offered the opportunity to work from home. So on that Tuesday, I decided to drive to work. So that way I can sort of pack up the car and start working from home the very next day on Wednesday. And the messaging came out later that evening saying, oh no, all of us now have to work from home. And I was lucky to have driven that day on that Tuesday. So I wake up Wednesday morning and I'm sitting on the couch trying to get into that mindset of working. And I really struggled Work is meant to be done at work for me. Coming home is my escape from work. I'm one that does really well at not taking work home. And that way, I'm able to sort of concentrate on my own life and my family, my social life, and find that balance. So that Wednesday, I really struggled. That next day, Thursday, struggled again. So that night, I packed up my bags. Friday morning, packed up the car and headed straight for the cottage. And I've been up here for going on 3 weeks now.
All right. And so tell me about this cottage, Norm. I mean, I know, but tell the listeners about this cottage, because if I recall, you had basically a big plot of land covered in trees and other shrubbery, and now you have a cottage, and you did most of that yourself. So how did that happen?
Yeah. So end of 2016, offered the opportunity to purchase 2 acres of forest up in Muskoka. Hesitated and then jumped on it. We went to go visit the land for the next year. I wanted to see what the patterns of growth and the snowfall and the snow melts were before we were able to decide on what area to clear to start building the house. During that time, I did my own research on architecture. I reached out to a few of my students who were in architectural technology. And then I designed my own blueprints. I brought it to a student. She took it as far as she could. And then we brought it to an architect up in Muskoka who took it to the end. And she put in all of her technical drawings, technical numbers, got her signature. And we presented that to the town. We got approval. And what was it? August of 2018 is when we laid foundation. My wife and I spent about 4 to maybe 5 months prior to that going up every single weekend with a rake, with a shovel. My father-in-law has an excavator, so that was a huge help. Spent about 5 months clearing that plot of land for the house. Laid foundation, and every weekend since then, I've been up here building. There's a lot of things that we weren't allowed to do based on our permit, so I didn't do the foundation. I didn't do my own framing. We couldn't rough in the plumbing or electrical, didn't do the roofing, but outside of that, we were able to more or less do a lot of it ourselves. So my wife and I did everything from the floors to drywall to trim, to finishing the decks, the railings, building stairs. A lot of these things I had never, ever done before in my life. But I've always enjoyed watching other people do it. So why not try it out? I spent a lot of time and money purchasing tools because I was told in order for me to do the job correctly, I needed the right tools. So I spent a lot of money on that.
I was definitely raised by a father who you can never have enough tools, even if you're not going to use them. So certainly there are too many tools sitting around my parents' house that maybe will never get used.
Yeah,
who knows?
Until you purchase your own plot of land and start building your own house, right?
That's right.
Yeah, no, it was a fun challenge. It was an exhausting challenge. It was a struggle at many times. But in the end, we built a house. We're not 100% done yet, but I've been living up here fine the past while, and I'm just doing odd things here and there. Since getting the approval from the bank saying that our build is complete, I've been building furniture. So I built our beds from scratch. I built our kitchen table, our benches from scratch. I got bored yesterday, so I built a desk for my back deck that looks out into the forest. So now my desk has a beautiful view of nature.
And I imagine it's a standing desk too, so you got that ergonomic helps as well.
That's correct. It's currently a standing desk because I have yet to build bar stools that reach that height.
Well, step by step, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely sounds like you've been able to get away from some of the strange chaos that's going on around COVID-19. Do you have lots of toilet paper up there? Because I know that all the stores are sold out.
You know what the funny thing is? About a month before all this happened, I happened to stock up on a lot of toilet paper up here. So it's fine where I'm at.
So you're not one of the hoarders though, right? Who's stopping everyone else from getting some.
Definitely a lot. And when I say stock up, I bought a 24 pack and that'll last me for a while.
All right. So you're in good shape. So, it's been interesting, right? All of us having to transition to that work from home mentality. And I'm in the same boat, I think, as you, where I try to like work is work and home is home. And it's a little weird for me because right now I'm recording this podcast at my desk where I normally like play video games, watch movies, whatever. My living room is right beside me. So it's very weird to, have to make that transition. But the longer it's gotten, the easier it's gotten for me. I think it took about 2 solid weeks and I like fell into a groove. And so hopefully I stay in that groove, but we don't know exactly when the end date on this is either. Right. So you could be up at the cottage for another month, 2 months, who knows? Yeah.
What I enjoy about being up here is that there's a lot of other things I can do. If I stayed at home, my place, my apartment in the city is right downtown, King West area. And it's a very densely populated area. I love living there. I've been there in my apartment for going on 8 or 9 years now, but it is tough to get outside of that apartment and to be sort of secluded and isolated. And I felt as if my only options to do anything other than work was to sit on the couch and watch TV. So up here, I have a lot of land to walk. I have a lot of land to clear and clean. That first weekend I spent up here, I went out and bought a chainsaw. I don't necessarily recommend that's a purchase for all of you out there listening to go out and buy, but for me it was beneficial. I was able to do a lot of grooming in my forest. I spent hours upon hours just cutting firewood when I'm not building stuff. But
that seems like one of those tools you'll never need to bring to your apartment in Toronto.
I don't think so. Yeah. I hope not.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it sounds like you're finding ways to still be active and do obviously your lifestyle's had to change. I imagine no rock climbing since I know you're fond of that. So it's been different. You can't do that right now, but.
So I'm laughing right now because I'm going to move my laptop and.
Oh, those are rock climbing handholds. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you building a rock climbing wall in the cottage?
I am. So the cool thing about where we are, we're built up on the Canadian Shield. So there's a lot of natural rock out here. But I purchased about 40 or 45 different holds from a good friend of mine. And I want to build my own little bouldering cave. Still debating if it's indoors or outdoors. Likely going to be outdoors. I'm definitely going to lose that match with my wife. But I do want to build my own rock climbing cave somewhere in the backyard, and maybe the idea of connecting natural rock with these holds, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that is a very cool idea. Well, I hope you have a chance over the next little while to build that. But thanks so much for talking to me today. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and we've been able to talk about your history, your programs, and how you're dealing with COVID-19. And I know it's a very unique scenario for everyone, as now we're going into exams. So there's not as many people would be on campus as much in class right now. But, the hope with this podcast is that we can keep people feeling connected to campus and that they still feel like the people they would see, whether that be staff or the students that I'm talking to who are sharing their experiences. The idea is they'll still be able to feel that connection to campus at UTSC. And so I think you and I are proving that whether you're 2 or 3 hours north of the city or just in a different part of the city, we can still feel connected to campus even if we're not there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. First, I just want to thank you for this opportunity and inviting me and having me here for this podcast. I can't say I've ever really done one before.
Neither have I. So
that's true.
Trial and error.
But I think what's also important is eventually, when this calms down and when it does end, the cool thing about this podcast is that it'll forever live sort of on the internet. And whether it's students coping now or using this to cope right now, or maybe it's for them to use it a year from now when they're struggling, I think now's the time to take advantage of social media, take advantage of this online platform that we are sort of forced to use. But the cool thing is everything lives in the cloud, and it's all accessible when needed.
Yeah. So as long as SoundCloud sticks around, the podcast will be around for students to listen to. All right. Thanks again, Norm. And hopefully when we're back on campus, students will be able to see around to join your programs.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I cannot wait to have lunch with you in our lunchroom.
Yeah. All right. Have a good day.
You too.